Fritz and I have like
Welcome to Media Path. I'm Fritz Coleman.
And I am Louise Palanker.
In the vast entertainment landscape, how do you mainly learn about something that you absolutely positively have to watch or listen? It's word of mouth, right? Mm-hmm. You trust the opinion of your friends to steer you to something awesome. Well, Media Path wants to be that friend whose opinion you trust. Now, today, Weezy and I are going to suggest our picks about the greatest Sidney Poitier movies that you might not have seen or have ever seen. We're just going to put them in the order that we love them. And then we're going to introduce our guest. I've been looking forward to talking to this guy. For my money, one of the greatest nightclub comics to ever practice the art form, Bobby Slayton, the Pitbull of Comedy. The only person who actually scares the crap out of the Omicron variant. He's going to be here in a couple of minutes.
Terrifying.
We're going to talk to Bobby.
Yeah.
First, I'm going to do my top 5 Sidney Poitier movies. Oh, incidentally, we're also going to discuss the life and times and sweetness and big heart of our friend Bob Saget that we're saying goodbye to today as well. So I'm going to go in reverse order here. This is number 5. Number 5 for me is Patch of Blue. This is a story of an uneducated, blind white girl who has been befriended by the black man. The black man being who? Sidney Poitier. She falls in love with him, having no idea that he's black. He's a kind-hearted soul, and they find escape in one another's lives. Number 4 for me is Raisin in the Sun. This is the story of a poor black family, and a substantial insurance payout could end up being a windfall for the family, or it could be the opposite. It could be the seed of their destruction. This is based on a Pulitzer Prize-winning play by Lorraine Hansberry. Poitier plays Walter, a young man who's just trying to find his station in life. I love this movie because it's based on a play, and the language is always richer in a play, and the family tension in this movie is very real. I loved it. Number 3 for me, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And older couples' attitudes are challenged when their daughter introduces them to her new fiance, who is, guess what? Black. It's Sidney Poitier, along with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, 3 titans of American film, a beautiful film. Number 2, To Sir with Love. This is where a black teacher from British Guyana ends up as a teacher at a school full of rambunctious white high school students from the slums of London's East End, and Lulu's To Sir with Love, which was a major hit at the time, came from that film. And my number 1, In the Heat of the Night. A black Philadelphia homicide detective passes through the racially hostile town of Sparta, Mississippi. Detective Virgil Tibbs. He comes in contact with his main antagonist, racist police chief Gillespie, played by Rod Steiger. I love this movie because it's one of the greatest acting duels between talented guys, in my opinion, in the history of movies. Now, my top 3 ones. So, In the Heat of the Night, To Sir with Love, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, all came out in 1967. This was just after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So the country was still in the throes of racial turmoil. And these 3 movies really poked at those issues head on. I think Sidney Poitier is one of the most charismatic, gifted presences in the history of film.
I do too.
Weezy?
Did you know, it's a little known Hollywood fact, the alternate title to In the Heat of the Night is Rod Steiger Chews Gum. They opted with The Heat of the Night. I think it's a better choice, actually. I did spend a lot of time watching Sidney Poitier movies over the weekend, Fritz. And in fact, I watched, and I advise that everyone do this. This is my recommendation of the week. I watched Blackboard Jungle back-to-back with To Sir with Love. Now, here's why that's fun to do. Blackboard Jungle is 1955, when the post-war nation was obsessed with the problem of juvenile delinquents. World War II veteran Richard Dadier, played by Glenn Ford, takes a teaching position at a rough New York City high school for boys. The staff warns him that the kids are a bunch of hoodlums, but Dadier remains idealistically purposeful. Oh, they're just misunderstood, and they're tough-talking, until they beat him up in an alley, threaten his wife, and try to rape a teacher. It's a boys' school flooded with toxic masculinity. The teacher was asking for it. Even Glenn Ford's wife wants to know what she was wearing. But Sidney Poitier's, I know, it's difficult sometimes to watch stuff, but you have to place it within the period, right? But Sidney Poitier stands out as a student. This was his 8th film credit, his first being nightclub extra in 1947's Sepia Cinderella, which is probably a must-watch. So even as an edgy high school tough, he has that regal bearing, and we just believe in him, which is why, only 12 years later, in To Sir with Love, Sidney Poitier graduates from student to teacher. He is an American, Mark Thackeray, who is seeking a career in engineering while teaching at a rundown London East End school full of ruffians and proper school rejects. Thackeray inspires the kids to treat themselves and each other with respect, which is why they start calling him sir and they start calling each other with respectful names. Once again, with the misogynistic tropes, there's a fair amount of gender stereotypes and slut-shaming, but placing the film within its historical frame of 1967 will give you the freedom to sloppy sob as Lulu sings To Sir with Love over the closing credits. And if you are out in search of shirtless Poitier, I recommend Lilies of the Field, in which he happens upon a group of nuns and builds them a church.
Yeah, that was a good movie too. I just couldn't include it in my top 5.
Well, I don't think it makes the top 5.
I think honestly, if you watched him with the sound down, which you could do with In the Heat of the Night, even his physical movements are perfect. When he's getting ready to get back on the train, and then Gillespie, the racist sheriff, Rod Steiger, has to come and convince him not to go. His making up his mind not to go and just turning around slowly and grabbing his suitcase and walking back to the car was so beautifully done. I don't know if that's direction or if it's just his natural talent.
I think it's posture.
Yeah.
The man had excellent posture.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Talented man. Mm-hmm. So before our guest arrives, because I think he stepped out to feed his drug habit or something.
He's arrived, but he's just puttering around his house because...
and he's got a leopard print desk chair.
There's a lot going on in that home. I got to tell you. It's by way of full disclosure, this home is across the street from where we are. Mm-hmm. But like with Omicron, it's like with Bobby Slayton, there's a lot of droplets. So this is a loud man. And he likes to talk. So he is sequestered, we're sequestered, and after the show, we're going to kind of mosey down the street and take some pictures together.
All right, here's your official introduction.
Yeah.
Bobby Slayton, the Pitbull of Comedy, one of the best club comics ever to practice the business. He had an amazing stand-up career. He ran his own room in Las Vegas for a while, did his own hysterical Showtime special, been on all the TV shows, The Tonight Show, Bill Maher, whatever. Great acting roles in Get Shorty, Ed Wood, Bandits. Did a really well-written series with a friend of ours, Mike Binder, on HBO called Mind of the Married Man, Curb Your Enthusiasm. He played Joey Bishop opposite Ray Liotta and Joe Mantegna in The Rat Pack. I want to ask him about this, too. Did Woody Allen's Amazon project called Crises in 6 Scenes. And he's Bobby Slayton. I'm so happy to talk to you, my friend. How are you?
Well, you guys make it seem like I've done so much. Thank you for dragging that out. It's funny because, I get your emails all the time about, I guess you guys have been doing this podcast for a couple of years. And I keep thinking, they're going to call me one of these days. I actually wasn't looking forward for you calling me at all. I really want to do the podcast.
Yeah.
But, when COVID hit,
right.
I guess it wasn't just me, but every comedian, I'm sure you guys did this too. Everybody was calling. Since everybody was home, I got all these calls from so many podcasts and so many people. And we wonder what comedians are doing during COVID. That was a big thing. And then we play this great game. And I go, right, I don't want to play a game. I'm not one of you guys that ever watched Jeopardy. I played Trivial Pursuit in 1980. I did a line of coke and stayed up to 4 a.m. That was the last time I played a game. I don't want anything to do with these podcasts. And since COVID hit, I go, what do I need to do podcasts for? I have nothing to plug. Because for years, when I played the comedy clubs, and you probably did, well, Fritz, you were on TV, so you didn't really, work the circuit as much. But, you go on the road all the time. You do morning radio. And that was a whole big thing. And since COVID hit, I'm not working. I go, I don't need to do any shows. But I knew you guys would eventually call me because and I knew you wanted to talk about Saget. And the same thing when Robin Williams died. After somebody dies, all the podcasts and all the DJs and all the radio people, they wait a day or two and they try to get, Billy Crystal or Steve Martin or important people. And when they can't get any of these people, I get a call a day or two
See,
later.
that's
talking about the
BS.
dead-
They call
I do
you
that.
because you were part of the San Francisco mafia of comedy. That's why they called you. You were part of
Right.
the incubation period of that which was Robin Williams.
No, but what he's saying is this is like a game of musical chairs, right? You got to be the last guy to die because then you get to talk about it's about timing. You got to time your death properly. You don't want to die on the same day as Dobie Gillis. Unless you're Bob Saget, who thinks that's the funniest thing he's ever done, probably.
Well, my wife, when my wife passed away 6 years ago, she died. And then 2 days later, Patton Oswalt's wife died. And of course, Patton was more famous than me, so he got all the press. And then Gary Shandling died. And I go, not that I needed press because of my wife's death. It's not like I could go, hey, I'm playing the Funny Bone in Atlanta. My wife's dead. It's not like I can parlay my dead wife into a gig. So it didn't really matter. I didn't really need to do any podcasts when that happened. But I knew I wouldn't get any press after Patton's wife passed away.
Once again, Bobby, it's timing. It is about timing.
Yeah, it's all about timing.
And,
being in the right place, the right time, which I've never been, except for right now, today with you guys. Finally, it worked out. And by the way, I didn't realize you were broadcasting 4 doors away from me. I would have come down to your house.
I know you would have, but it's just we don't
when
want.
this all clears up in a couple of years, you'll come down.
Fritz is just he may still be contagious. He had the COVID all last week, Bobby. You don't want to be sitting next to this guy. I'm trying to keep you safe. I love you.
I don't mind getting it, and I'll tell you why. Because my girlfriend lives 5 minutes away. We see each other 4 or 5 times a week, which is great. But, if I have COVID and I have to sequester myself for 5-10 days, it'd be a nice excuse to catch up with a lot of shows she doesn't want to see.
Oh, well, timing.
So let me tell you my first exposure to the Pitbull of Comedy. So I think it was like 1982.
Does this get violent?
And they used to have the LA Comedy Competition.
Right,
and it was stupid to call it the LA Comedy Competition because all the great comics in the world that lived in San Francisco, Bobby Slayton, Dana Carvey, Paula Poundstone, Ryan Reynolds, would all come down here in one of Bobby's antique cars. They would blow the doors off the comedy competition, kill the 5 to 10 spots, and then get in their car and leave and go back up to San Francisco. You guys used to kill that thing because you were the best comics in the world. And
You say one of my antique cars, like I'm Jay Leno. I had a 1954 Chevy, which was my only car. Which is, it's a great car to have when you're Jay Leno and you have 10 other cars and you can actually change the oil or fix the light. When you live in San Francisco with a car that can barely make it up a hill and, barely make it down the 5, it got like 20 feet a gallon. It wasn't the most practical car to have. I remember
it was cool looking though. It shined real good.
I can't believe you remember that.
No, I worked with you at the Laugh Stop in Encino, and you were going to do a show, but you were standing out in the parking lot being protective of your car until you went on. This big
I
shiny...
don't remember any of this.
Now,
but I believe...
here's the first conversation I had with you was in the green room at the Comedy and Magic Club, and I said, well, you guys come down.
You remember
no.
the year? You remember my car?
No, it was a very, I don't want to say a traumatizing experience, but it was fun. But I said, why did you guys come down here? First prize in the comedy competition was like $25. One night they would do it at the Ice House, and the next night they do it at Comedy and Magic Club. And I was talking to you about it, and I was dazzled at how many good comics there were in San Francisco. And he said, because San Francisco supports the arts and you can grow as a comic up there. And you told me it was costing you money to come down here because the top 5 or 6 working comics could make a living in San Francisco, a couple $1,000s a week without even having to leave town, which I thought was amazing.
That was a lot of money at the time. You talk about right timing. The only time in my life I was ever in the right place at the right time, and I was just lucky, was when that whole comedy boom. And Fritz, you seem to know the years, but in the late 70s, early 80s, when comedy started taking off and every city was opening a comedy club, San Francisco had like 4 or 5, well,
the best,
3 or 4.
Holy City Zoo, all those great clubs up there.
And there's also one-nighters. So you could drive and make $100, $500, whatever, at the time it was a lot of money. So every night you could probably work 6-7 nights almost every night. So you can make 2, 3, 4,000.
And are you getting more stage time because you can hit more clubs per night?
Yeah, but now, people will say to me now, I always get young comics asking me for advice. And I go, look, I never did anything right. I can't give you advice. I think when I started out, I don't know about you guys, but you just got up and you did it. There was no formula. There were no rules. There was no, guidelines. There was no pamphlet. Now people do comedy classes. And now the only time you can watch a comic and see how anybody did it was maybe to watch The Tonight Show or Merv Griffin. Now there's a million Netflix specials. There's a million comics. There's YouTube. So not only can you watch how to do it, but at the same time, I think the negative thing is it's all been done already. I see comics now doing things that comics of our generation and maybe the generation before, it's all been done. It's almost like music. I've heard it already. And I'm not saying there's not room for new comics. You see a lot of good people, but I think it's tougher now than ever to do stand-up.
To be unique, yeah.
And you were starting in San Francisco at a time when the comics had to go on strike to get paid down here in 1980 or whatever it was. But you guys were being paid in San Francisco, right? So we had to go on strike to get like a $25 tip at the Comedy Store down here, which kind of kept a damper on the growth of comedy and the growth of performers getting better down here.
Yeah, but that strike didn't go on for very long. It wasn't only like a month or so.
No, but it was the attitude of the club owners, and they were spoiled.
Right. But the point is that all of us, Kevin Meaney, Bob Goldthwait, Paul Poundstone, Dana Carvey, Kevin Pollak, we all had to move down to LA. At the same time, there were Boston comics. There was the opposite end of the country. Yep. There were guys from Boston. They eventually had to come to LA. And all the New York comics who, San Francisco had a nice little comedy scene. But New York was really where, Richard Belzer, Elaine Boozler, Jerry Seinfeld, Mark Schiff, and all of them, that was the biggest. Even they had to come to LA. This was the place that everybody finally came to. And
there are little local nuggets like Boston had a supreme. Lenny Clark and all those guys, Stephen Wright,
Sweeney,
were really good. And New York, obviously, you really had to know what you were doing in New York. But they all ended up coming out here because the talk shows were out here. Carson was out here.
Look where we all are now.
Here we are, right across the street.
So we're going to do a little bit of a tribute to Bob Saget right now. I was the MC at the Laugh Factory during, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s. Bob Saget was one of the comics that frequented that club, and I spent a lot of time with him. I introduced him like hundreds of times, but so it was an interesting phenomenon to observe. When Bob took the stage, everyone was excited to get to see their favorite TV dad in person, but then Bob lodged into his act. And the look on people's faces was as if Ward Cleaver had walked up to them and cracked a bunch of fart jokes and then told them that his balls itch. Folks went from shocked to delighted, and if they weren't able to make that shift, Bob was like, you can either get on board with this or not because I am going to continue. And then he'd talk about how on America's Funniest Videos, a monkey stuck his finger in his butt, sniffed it, and then fell out of a tree. And this was Bob Saget in real life. It was something else to watch people get with the program on who Bob was going to be on stage. It didn't take long. It was quite a ride.
I call it the Skip Stevenson syndrome. Okay. Do you remember him and his fame?
I remember Skip. Skip was a Comedy Store guy, and I remember him, of course, when he was on Real People.
Yeah, he was on Real People. It was the same syndrome as Saget. He had this real scrubbed American, unoffensive McDonald's type character because he had this sort of platonic sexual tension with Sarah Purcell and they were real cute about it and everything. And when he was in a club, he went out of his way to make people understand that this was not the real him. And it got so bad, especially when he was full on into blow, he would not only offend people, he would clear the room. I saw him in the Ice House literally blow an entire 180-person audience out the door. They couldn't stand it anymore. So he just had this thing where he refused to allow people to accept that he was that nice guy that was his TV persona. And Saget does the same thing.
But he never walked a room. He never walked a room. There was people like Damon Wayans that would walk a room.
He didn't have a cocaine habit and just scare people.
No, Bob was always like appropriately naughty. I mean, it was, you'd be spitting up a lot of beverages, but nobody was walking out. I mean, the guy was just too delightful.
Yeah, I love watching Saget. It was funny because I didn't watch a lot of comics. I wasn't at the Improv or the Comedy Store that much because, like I said, I was on the road. So when I was home, I'd like to stay home. But I would go to the Comedy Magic Club, and it was always like I'd like to watch Bob, and I'd like to watch Gilbert Gottfried, not so much to watch them as much as I love both of them, but it's to watch the audience when they didn't know. Like, okay, I haven't done stand-up for a while, and about 6 months ago, I took a gig in Vegas opening up for Gilbert Gottfried. I wanted to get back into stand-up. I hadn't worked for a while, and everybody coming to that show knew Gilbert. But in the old days, before they knew him, they would just go to a comedy club. And like you said, Weezy, you go see Saget. He was Ward Cleaver. They knew him from Full House, America's Funniest Videos, whatever. Such a clean-cut guy. And I would love to watch, because some of the audience would know what they were in for, but so many of them, it was so funny to watch their faces.
Yeah.
That was the best part. Everybody loved to watch the audience watching Saget.
Exactly. I think Saget loved it too. He had the best view of the audience and he just delighted in it. And it's just like he was not going to be derailed. This is my act and this is what I'm doing and this is what I find funny. And, you know, I'm a great guy, so get with this. And they usually did. I don't remember anybody kind of like complaining or asking for their money back. It was just like, oh my God, can you believe what he said? Danny Tanner just said.
Well, it takes guts. Your act takes guts. Did you start out being the energy level and your attitude on stage? Or did you grow into that?
Oh, that Pitbull of Comedy thing, you know, the way it all started, when I started doing stand, I actually have somewhere this little cassette tape of my first time on stage. And of course, like everybody, it was abominable. I haven't listened to it in years, but if I listen back to it now, it's probably okay for a 21-year-old guy in the 70s that was never on stage and didn't watch a lot of comedy, you know, but it was pretty bad, as I recall. And my first couple of times at Norm Crosby's Comedy Shop, I was pretty bad. But every comic, you know, was not great when they started, except for maybe a Dave Chappelle, you know, a few guys like that who happened to be just, you know, these enigmas who happened to be terrific comedians. But I got that whole thing because I used to open up for rock and roll bands in San Francisco. There was a club, the big club in San Francisco was the Punchline Comedy Club that the late, great Bill Graham, the promoter, rock promoter owned. And next door, it was a big nightclub where Warren Zevon would play, Little Steven and whatever, the Four Tops, Tower of Power, Ray Charles. And they would use comedians to open up. And Dana Carvey would open up, and Kevin Pollak would open up, a little Bob Sarlott would open up. But when you had to open up for some punk band like the Stranglers or Meet DeVille or the Tubes, they would call me.
Oh.
Ghostbusters. Not that I would do well, but it was like riding a mechanical bull. I knew if I could stay on for 10 minutes, I knew I was going to get thrown off and have a concussion. But if I could stay on for 10 minutes and make my $50, I did my job. And if I could get people not to throw shit at me, it was going to be okay.
So it was a defense mechanism that put you into that frame of mind on stage.
It became kill or be killed. And yeah, that's how it kind of started. And also, you know, the alcohol, and I never did massive amounts of cocaine, but you did a little coke, you had a shot of vodka, you had that whole punk rock and roll mentality and that, you know, rebel and that Lenny Bruce and, kind of get them before they get you kind of thing. So
yeah, and it probably,
evolved.
You know, and it's probably very exhilarating when you can pull it off and come off stage and be like I nailed that. That probably feels like you're flying.
It was great. You know what? I opened up for people like Ray Charles and Tower Power, Warren Zevon, where the audience was not there to see the comic, but as long as your name was on the marquee and they knew they were going to, and I was kind of getting a little bit of a name in the Bay Area. So if you could do okay, you know, like you said, if you could do your 15 minutes, get 5 minutes of laughs, 10 minutes of them, just get quiet. That's fine. And it's great because they're not in a comedy club and they're not there to see you. So it's a comedy club, they're there to laugh. And it's great when you make them laugh, but when they have no idea you're going to be on the bill and they're not there to see you at all, and you can get them, like you said, I think there's a extra little bit of pleasure in doing that.
Yeah, Steve Martin said that's the worst thing about being a stand-up is opening for like a rock and roll band or something that doesn't care about you. He said you just have to have a hearty self-esteem to pull that off.
Yeah. And Albert Brooks did that famous routine opening for Richie Havens where people timed their drugs for the headliner. And, every comic has horror stories about comedy clubs and bachelorette parties and being drunk and the 3 shows on Saturday, but opening for a rock band. So that's where that whole aggressive thing happened, you know? And also, look, right now I'm 66 years old. I just got hearing aids. I'm more relaxed than I've ever been. I haven't done cocaine in years, but even like in the middle of the afternoon, So back then, when you're trying to make a name for yourself and prove, you're like Jake LaMotta. You didn't get me down. You didn't get me down, right?
Plus, it was different. It was different. It made you stand out from the rest of the pack.
Right. Well, I was, I guess, I'm not going to call myself an original because there were certainly guys before me. But it was, I made a name for myself doing that. And I was very proud of it. It was good. There are people who were better. There are people who were worse. And who's that head? Get out of the picture.
She's trying to take your picture,
That's our producer.
Bobby.
She can do whatever she wants.
Now,
she's taking your picture.
She's taking your picture. And you need more light on your face if you can make that happen. Like, just...
I don't know how to make more light. Why don't you just come to my house and take a picture?
Okay. Bobby.
You know what? Here's one thing I don't know how to do. Okay. So one reason I really hate doing podcasts is that, I do this in my office. I shut my home phone off. My home phone doesn't ring for days, except when I do a podcast. And I don't have the light worked out exactly. The other thing about podcasts, which is funny, now that people are always doing interviews on television, you realize how fucking ugly people's homes are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You ever notice that you're talking to somebody, you have such an ugly house. It was like this Home Depot kind of, this, where do you decorate? Like, it looks like your grandmother's house. You just...
You officially retired just before the pandemic, didn't you? I mean, that was, or is it the gigs dropped off and you decided to announce that was your retirement point?
Well, I don't know if I retired or they retired me. It's like, you can't fire me because I quit. It was more like,
but so you didn't subject yourself to the Zoom comedy experience of the last 2 years, which is like surgery without anesthesia. It's the worst thing.
I was very, very lucky because here's what happened. Look, it is nothing to do. I'm not bitter about this. When I stopped right before COVID, the comedy scene changed tremendously. Netflix, young comics, all my fans, what few fans I had, either died or retired or moved to Florida or didn't give a shit about comedy clubs anymore, DUIs, bachelor parties, urban crowds, whatever it is. I don't want to go out. I don't want to watch any comedy, but if I want to, I can sit in my bed with my 80-inch television and watch comedy.
Precisely.
And everybody, it's like being out. I don't want to be out with some asshole on his phone next to me and some idiot, knocking over his drinks and some bitch complaining about her food. And I don't want to be around people. So I think comedy took a different turn. At the same time, I was getting sick of doing this shit.
Yeah.
I hit my 60s and I was making money doing radio commercials and a few TV shows. So, like I said, you can't fire me, I quit. Mm-hmm. And, the last time I worked was 2 years ago when Bill Maher took me and Sarah Silverman to Hawaii. And we did a great show. And I could see why Bill Maher still likes to work. When you fly in a private jet and you're making six figures for a night and you're staying at a Ritz-Carlton, I guess comedy can be pretty good. But why guys like Seinfeld and Bill still do it? Obviously, they love it because they certainly don't need the money. I get tired of working the clubs, and I never made it to that level. I am thrilled. People say, what do you do all day? If I'm not playing my drums, I'm making these guitars. If you come over, you got to see these.
Okay.
You got to see what it's my hobby now. And, I read books and I watch television. I'm happy not doing anything. I love doing nothing. Love it.
All right. I would love to hear some stories of hecklers or you kind of like being confronted by somebody who was offended by perhaps something that you said in your act.
Oh, my God. Where do I begin?
I don't even know.
I don't even know either. I mean, look, it's, there were times when I went over the line, but there were guys like Bill Hicks, who opened for me when he was a young kid. Bill Hicks opened for me when he was like 17, 18. We shared a couple of condos together. And Bill, I remember, would go out of his way to offend people. He'd walk a whole room. He would like to do it. And I think Sam Kinison would like to do it. I never wanted to walk people, but if somebody got offended, I went out or heckled me, I went out of my way. Sometimes they'd shut up and I'd go, that's not enough. Like if you stole my wife's purse and I caught you and I kicked you, I would beat you till you were dead. And I would do that to an audience member. You started it, I'm going to finish it. But there were nights when I did nothing and people just look, and now with the woke culture, as they call it, right. People are more offended than any, but it's mind-boggling now. A couple of times I went to the Improv in the last year just to dabble and see if I could still do it. And a third of the audience was young kids, and they were shocked that the material was really nothing that you guys would be offended by. But people, and then other people, I think, find it refreshing. Oh my God, I can't believe he said that. He made a gay joke. He made a black joke. He made, And so like a lot of the audience likes it, and a few people are offended. But there were times where, bachelorette parties are notorious. I mean, Fritz, you've worked bachelorette parties, and
no.
But I used to do a lot of jokes about my wife, and a lot of jokes about women, and sometimes they would run out in tears, and I wouldn't feel bad. I thought I was trying to help them.
I wonder if anybody second thought their decision.
Yeah, my act was like a tough love program. That's what I always felt that about my act. It was like boot camp for marriage.
Well, Seinfeld said that everything is so politically correct. Now, he won't do college campuses. And if Seinfeld won't do college campuses, we are too politically correct right now.
I remember reading that story about it, but I don't know if Seinfeld has done college campuses for years, because he's busy playing Caesars for $500,000.
That might be it.
But the last time Seinfeld really played college campuses. But
I don't know.
And Chris Rock said the same thing. I remember that story, but I haven't done that in many, many years. But Weezy, you asked if I may call you Weezy. Until we go in.
Yep.
Miss Weezy.
Mm-hmm.
There were nights where people, the Comedy Magic Club, the most politically correct club in the country,
right.
Mike Lacey, who owns the club,
yep.
and Fritz, he played there many times. For years, he wouldn't use me because I offended a woman one night. And years later, he put me on. I think I was doing a benefit for my daughter's school. And Mike says, "Oh my God, you're like George Carlin. You're like Lenny Bruce. I didn't realize how funny you are. You got to come back." But he wouldn't put me on a Saturday night when his regulars were there. He would put me on the Friday late show. And his cousin, this idiot woman who ran the place, had signs on every table. This guy is very funny, but he's very offensive. And I'm going, first of all, I don't think you need it on every table. It's overkill. And by the time people are in the club, it's a little late for this.
Why not just put it in the menu, like after every item,
It was great. I mean, I love stuff like that. I thought it was great.
But do you remember ever being followed to your car or being threatened or, anyone you had to talk down just to kind of like escape with your life?
Actually, you know what? Not as much as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
There was one night. There was one night in New Orleans or Baton Rouge, but many, many years ago, Harris Pete, I think the doorman who was at the comedy store, was opening up for me. We're going back 30, 35 years before I was married, and there was a table of angry lesbians, like there's any other kind. That used to be one of my jokes.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sure you can.
We're going to need to put a card on the table. If you're listening to this podcast, please put a card on your own table.
You want to know something? I found out years later that lesbians became my biggest fans, and they were the coolest people because they'd been through enough crap. But back then, when the gays were fighting the good fight, I couldn't make fun of them. Mm-hmm. But so anyway, these four women were so pissed. And after the show, they came backstage and they said, "Bobby, you better wait in the dressing room. These four women are waiting for you." And of course, I did a few lines of coke, a few vodkas, and I was ready to fight. You don't want to go out there, Bobby. And they were waiting. So they called the Baton Rouge Police Department to give me an escort to my car. And I was saying to the cops, "Come on, we got to take these lesbians. Come on." But that really didn't happen very often.
Speaking about that same topic, the LGBTQ topic, what about Chappelle's current turmoil that he finds himself in? What's your opinion about that whole thing?
Well, what's very funny is 2 years ago, and not that I took it from Chappelle took it from me, I did that exact same joke for like a year about the, what was the joke about? Pussy, I forgot the joke already. But then Chappelle did it on a special. It wasn't an impossible joke to think of. He got so much crap for it. What was the joke? I don't even remember now. It's been so long since I did stand-up.
All I remember is that he was saying something about trans people.
That's the current thing. It's the trans.
But you know what? And look, I love Dave Chappelle with a passion. I thought his special was great, a little preachy, but great. But you want to know something? When I started doing stand-up in San Francisco, the reason I got so much shit was for the exact same reason. When I was 22 years old, is that the gay movement was just starting out. I started in San Francisco in the early 70s. So the hippie movement was kind of winding down, ending. The Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, and the whole gay movement, before AIDS was starting to be big. So it was hippie, gay kind of transition. And I remember there was a black comedy night in Oakland. There was a gay comedy night in the Castro district. And there were gay comics making fun of straight people and black comics making fun of white people. And at 22, I said, wait a second, that's fine. You can make fun of me, but I can't make fun of you. I can't do gay jokes. And they weren't, and pardon my term, faggot jokes. They weren't Sam Kinison AIDS jokes. They weren't mean. They were gay jokes. And And gay people got so mad at me, and there was this whole anti-Bobby Slayton thing in San Francisco. Oh, he's making fun of queer people. Well, you're making fun of me. Why can't I make fun of you? It was nothing mean or vicious, but the more they came down on me, no pun intended, the more I came down on them.
Well, it has to do with
black comics. You know, I never use the N-word on stage, but white people do this, white people do that. You know, well, let me tell you, black people don't shut up in movie theaters. As the first comic to do that joke, you can't shut the fuck up in a movie theater. And people, oh my God. But for the most part, and even black people found it funny. But there were that one aspect that, you know, the militant, radical, gays, blacks. So if you're going to give me shit, I'm just going to give it back to you. So the whole point was Dave Chappelle, the trans people are the same way. I think there's like 30 of them, and they talk so much, it makes it seem like there's a million of these people.
No, there's a lot. There's a lot more than you realize. First of all, there's a lot of people that have taken that to their graves and lived an unhappy life because of it.
No, I know.
The other thing, Bobby, is that it has to do with something called a power dynamic, which is that if you're more powerful in society, you don't get to make fun of people who, with in terms of some sort of kind of
I get it.
chart.
Get it. No,
but then the big question is, who determines who has more power, Dave Chappelle or the trans community? So that's where it gets confusing. But I guess what he said was disrespectful and using a term that the trans community doesn't even want people to know
But if
exists.
you watch his special, he apologizes to trans people for 15 minutes before he befriended, and he told this great story about letting this inexperienced trans comic open for him in San Francisco. Remember that?
Exactly.
He was really nice about it, and then he just said something at the end that really pissed everybody off. It was.
Look, I think. Look. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get any traffic. I think most trans people, and I can't speak for the trans community, I think most of them find it very funny or didn't really care. But there are a few people that get very offended. The same thing happened to me. And okay, look, if I was trans or I was gay or I was black in the 70s, I can see why people hate police, and I can see why people are offended, and I can see why people are touchy. I get it. I do get it. I really do. But that's why I'm glad I'm not doing stand-up anymore, because I don't want to have to walk that line and apologize or explain.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky needle to thread. So we would love to hear you tell some jokes that you've retired because they're completely offensive in today's culture.
Well, I wish you would have given me a heads up on this. Well, first of all, I've retired totally, so it's kind of water under the bridge. I don't, there is nothing that I retired before I quit. And when I did, I did a corporate gig, one little corporate gig a few months ago, but it was for a bunch of guys in Vegas. So, everything goes.
Right.
But there was nothing. If I had to go back and do my act now, I would still do exactly what I did before.
I remember your closing joke 40 years ago at the Comedy and Magic Club. You closed with your stamp licking joke, which was hysterical. I saw it 50 times and it made me laugh my ass off.
Oh, it was the pap test stamp?
Yeah, the stamp thing.
That was like props. Yeah, that wasn't an offensive joke.
No, I didn't say it was offensive. I just one that I remembered from your act that you always killed with at those comedy competitions.
I carried a stamp in my wallet which celebrated the pap test, and I said I couldn't bring myself to lick this and put it in an envelope, which was reminiscent of the Chevy Chase joke. It wasn't, I didn't take it from him, but the joke that he did about a stamp honoring prostitution. Remember that joke?
Right.
It's a 10-cent stamp. Alan Zweibel wrote it, but if you want to lick it across the corner.
Right.
Similar licking stamp joke.
Sure, sure. Of the genre.
I retired, or would retire now. I had one joke about, Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner, but it was nothing I found offensive. And and so many people have done jokes about that already. It's probably old news. I don't even remember what the joke was. There's nothing that I would retire. Maybe no, because again, there's nothing I found in my act that I thought was offensive. And I didn't do things to offend people. I did things I thought were funny. And if it offended people, you fuck them, Just that simple.
And I think you have to have that attitude to have the career that you've had, because, you've got to be kind of just fearless to get out there and just like, this is what I think is funny. This is who I am. This is my personality. You're here. You're paid money. Sit down, relax, enjoy yourself. I'm Bobby Slayton. Good night. So, you got to be that guy. A lot of people would be too sensitive or would be too worried about hurting somebody's feelings, but your intentions were never to hurt anyone's feelings. Your intentions were to entertain them.
Never. And if a trans person or a black person got offended, I would feel bad because I never did that to, But I feel like Fritz asked me about Dave Chappelle. It's the same thing. He did what he thought was funny. I thought that special was brilliant.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And, all the controversy just seemed so ridiculous, especially with all the crap that's going on in the world, with global warming, and Trump was president at the time, and it's like the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and all these wars and famine and COVID, and really you're going to worry about him doing a joke about transgender people.
So earlier in your career, before you got the guts to do it on stage for the first time, who were the people that made you want to try this?
Before I started doing stand-up?
Yeah, I mean, who did you look up to?
I don't know about you guys, but when I started doing stand-up, if you talk to most comics, and again, I don't know about you two, but I never wanted to do stand-up when I was younger. You always hear these interviews. Oh, when I was young, I would watch, whatever, Buddy Hackett, and I'd watch Ed Sullivan, and I'd watch, you hear black comics about, I'd watch Eddie Murphy, and I wanted to be a comic. I never crossed my mind to ever be a comic until I went to the Holy City Zoo one night in San Francisco and did it. So I never thought about it, but the people who made me laugh, okay, I'm 66. So in the 60s, people that made me laugh, I guess from Ed Sullivan, was watching Rodney Dangerfield.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching the Smothers Brothers, who I love with a passion.
Mm-hmm.
Lenny Bruce was before my time. Mort Saul, at 16, 17, I certainly didn't get that. But I watched, I grew up with a lot of, Robert Klein was the guy.
Oh, yeah, he was my man. He and Carlin were the two guys for me.
Well, if you talk to most Jewish comics my age, who were in their teens and early 20s, it was Klein. And more of the Catholic Christian comics, it was Carlin.
Mm-hmm.
And to the black comics, it was Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the next generation of black comics, I think a lot of them will tell you it was Eddie Murphy, and then Chris Rock. And then, so I think we all had, I loved them all. But I think that the guy, as a semi-adult in my teens, it was Robert Klein.
Absolutely. And if you look at the growth of the New York comedy scene with Caroline's and the comic strip, guys like Seinfeld, Larry Miller, Paul Reiser, they are nothing but offshoots of Robert Klein. They're doing Robert Klein's act with a slight twist.
Right. And
I don't mean to insult them, but you hear it in their cadences and their patterns. It's very Robert Klein.
And the same thing happened with Letterman, where you'd take a lot of male comics would just take on those patterns because they were so engaging.
Yeah.
Well, and those guys will admit it. They talk about how that was. And you know what? Even though he doesn't sound anything like him, Jay Leno loved Klein.
Mm-hmm.
There was Klein. And there was David Brenner, who became a good friend of mine, who I love Brenner. It was, these straight white Jewish New York monologists who I could identify with,
Yeah.
So those were the guys that I loved the most.
Yeah. I never thought about doing it, but I remember the first time I ever saw stand-up.
Who did you watch? You watched like Willard Scott to get into like weather? You sit there watch Willard Scott go, I got to get away.
I said, man, if I could wear a bow tie like that.
House, go, Mom, I think it's going to rain tonight. And then you go out and watch Willard Scott or one of those guys.
Willard Scott.
No. I mean, for my stand-up desire, I never had, my self-esteem wasn't hardy enough to think I could ever do it myself. But when I was a junior in high school, I think, or a senior, somebody bought me tickets. On the East Coast, they used to have these things called music fairs. Buffalo had one called the Melody Fair. And in California, or in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, they had the Valley Forge Music Circus. This was like a Cirque du Soleil tent with 3,000 seats, and it was a beautiful venue. So somebody bought me tickets to see George Carlin. I'd never seen stand-up. I didn't know the tricks that it takes you a couple of years to sort of build this. But this guy stood on stage and for an hour and a half, told in such a matter-of-fact way these wonderful stories, never looking at notes and everything. And honest to God, it was like a religious experience for me. I said, how can somebody do that? And I was mesmerized by him. So he was my conversion to really. He
was. Before I started doing stand-up, I went to see him too. I was a doorman. Before I started doing stand-up at 21, I was a doorman at a club called the Boarding House in San Francisco, where Robin, before he was Robin, opened up for Melissa Manchester, and Steve Martin played there a lot with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Man.
They would open up for him. And I watched them, still never thought about doing stand-up. And then Henny Youngman came in and did a week. His, one-liners from the old Borscht Belt Catfield days. And I'm watching him. And again, none of them were role models for me. I never watched Robin or Steve Martin or Henny Youngman. I want to be one of these guys. They made me laugh, but it never crossed my mind to do it. Mm-hmm. And I went to a party one night. That's how I started doing stand-up. Went to a party one night and started doing Henny Youngman's jokes. I was 21 years old. Somebody said, hey, there's a club called the Holy City Zoo. You should try stand-up. So I wrote 5 minutes of material, not one-liners, take my wife, please kind of stuff, but awful stuff, like I said earlier.
Well, let me ask both of you. If you're 12 years old, you're 15 years old, do your friends describe you as funny?
Yeah, mine did. Yeah. I mean, it was the only way I got attention. I was bad in athletics.
Class clown. Yeah.
I was that really unhealthy. That was me.
So that means that when you saw stand-up, it wasn't that foreign to you. It wasn't such a leap to kind of imagine, I could take what I am naturally and sort of craft it into an act. This is something
I could get paid for this and do it for an hour and a half, and nobody says, shut up. That would be
Every April Fool's Day, I went down to the local joke store, and I bought, the fake vomit, fake doggy do. That wasn't really stand-up.
It wasn't a strong closer, but it worked.
The joy buzzer. None of my tricks or jokes really ever seem to fool anybody. The fake vomit. And,
I bought the fake vomit
worked,
too, Bobby.
But I tried.
I saw a kid at camp with the fake vomit. And I'm like, where did you get that? It's like it becomes a desirable item, and what were some of the other things that I just, of course there was I guess they call it a whoopee cushion, but the thing that farts when you sit down. I had to have that, had to have the buzzer. Yeah, you could send away at the end of the comic books, right? There was stuff you could send away for that was just kind of amusing.
Johnson Smith catalog sent away for everything.
I talked to George Wallace one time, and he said the hardest he's ever worked in his life was running his own room in Las Vegas, which you have experience doing. You had Hooters. What hotel was that in?
Oh, my God. Hooters was at Hooters.
No, so it wasn't part of like a main hotel or something.
No, it wasn't a Hooters restaurant. It was a Hooters hotel.
Okay.
Hooters has a
but
hotel.
Anyway, but am I right about that? He said because what happens is they give you a budget. You have to buy your own advertising. You have to hire your own acts. You have to hire the stage crew. It's a really hard job, and only a small portion of it is actually performing.
I'll tell you quickly what happened with me, and it was a godsend. I was working the clubs. This is 10 years ago. And, work was drying up again. I wasn't on television a lot. I was working, but I was playing horrible comedy club. And Hooters wanted to put entertainment into their hotel. Their hotel was right off the strip. And it was on a corner. We had the MGM Grand. Across from you had New York. And across from that, you had the Luxor. So Carrot Top was at the Luxor. New York either had Roseanne Barr or Louis Anderson. And over the MGM Grand, every week was either a boxing match, Robin Williams, David Copperfield, Lewis Black. And I'm off the strip, and it's a Hooters hotel. So right there, I have 2 strikes against me. But what I got was something that no comic in my generation ever had. Rita Rutner was the first comic of our generation to go into Vegas. I mean, there were all the Vegas comics, the Buddy Hackett, Don Rickles, the Rat Pack. But of our generation to have their own room, Rita was the first one. Mm-hmm. And her husband, Martin, who was an advertising, brilliant
PR I know those guys. He
was a great guy. And Rita went in there with this great act that was perfect for Vegas, and they did all this PR work. And then George Wallace, I think, was the second one to go in. And then again, like I said, Louis Anderson went in, and there were all these comedians, Seinfeld would be playing, and George Carlin, and Bill Cosby, whatever. So there was always something going on in that town, and it was crazy. So when Hooters hired me, they actually gave me a salary, and George Wallace and none of those guys got a salary. They went for a piece of the door, had to do their own advertising, had to put themselves in their own, hotel and pay for their rent. And Hooters, for some reason, and I don't know how I worked this out, but the guys shined down on me. They gave me this room, and I don't have time to tell you the whole story, but it was not a great room, but I fixed it up. And I went out, and George Wallace and Rita Rutner's husband said to me, look, I don't know what to tell you. There's so much competition in this town now. It's going to be hard to put asses in the seats. Go to the concierges, give them free tickets, So every day I would go to concierges and I would go to all the hotels and not only give them free tickets, but I got the press to like me, give me some nice reviews. And one day I came up with this brilliant plan. I thought, look, they call me the Pitbull of Comedy. I wonder if I send away, I bet you some company makes chocolate dog shit. And I went on the internet and they made chocolate dog shit.
Okay.
And I sent away for all this chocolate dog shit. I went to Michael's Arts and Craft Supply and I put those little Chinese takeout boxes, which all had bones on them. And I put in that Easter grass. I put in that grass, chocolate dog shit, and 2 tickets for my show, and a little review. And I went to every concierge, and I got a lot of press for this, for the chocolate dog shit. And people told me it was actually really good. And so anyway, I started getting these really nice reviews. And then I decided, some of this is on my website, there's no way I can compete with David Copperfield and these big, beautiful hotels and Rita Rutner and Frank Sinatra, and whoever was playing in town. So I needed a really good opener. And I had Hooters paid for this. I had every comic playing Vegas in the next month do a little 1-minute video for me. And I wound up having a 15-minute video of Robin Williams, Jay Leno, the Smothers Brothers, David Brenner, Louis Anderson, Rita Rutner, Carrot Top, 30 comics, Howie Mandel, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And they would all, how can you go see Bobby Slayton? You were at Hooters watching this idiot? And it was brilliant.
That was your opening act.
It was I actually had an opening act also. But for people who didn't know who I was, it was such a nice thing. Yeah. Wow, Alice Cooper and Jay Leno and Robin Williams. And
gives you credibility. Who did you have open for you at the club?
I had a guy named Robert Duchesne, who was a great friend of mine opening, but I had a few comics come by and open up. It's funny when people find out you have a room, how many people call you? Oh, Bobby, just stop by to say hello. Oh, by the way, here's my video if you need an opener. People I haven't talked to in years.
But what George was saying is, the least amount of your energy is performing and writing new material because you have to be a businessman. He said that's what was so hard about it.
It was, but Hooters put me up. They gave me a beautiful condo next door. This lasted for 2 years. And like I said, most comics had to and then we started doing these monthly lunches with the mayor, Oscar Goodman, who was the old mob lawyer. And me and Anthony Cools, a great hypnotist, and David Brenner and George Wallace and Carrot Top and Penn Jillette. Once a month, maybe once every couple of weeks, we'd have a comedian's lunch. And a guy comedians only. It was like the Rat Pack. It was like the Friars Club. Rita Rutner could not come. It was sorry, no broads. No agents, no managers, just comedians. But we'd have a big lunch, and we'd always get a great picture in the paper of the Smothers Brothers and Penn Jillette and Bobby Slayton and the mayor, and we'd always have a great lunch. So, all these little things that I had to do to try to get asses in the seats, and it worked. But it was a lot of work.
You had natural skill as a marketer. You were coming up with concepts that worked.
But it was really a lot of work.
Yeah.
But then again, I had 23 hours a day when I wasn't doing anything. So,
Carrot Top is the punchline of a lot of jokes. And then I never respected Dice as much as I did. Do you remember what he said on the Comedy Central roast for William Shatner? And instead of roasting William Shatner, all the comics are coming up because Carrot Top was on the dais and they're making fun of Carrot Top. So Dice is like 7th in line. Did you see this, Bobby? And Dice comes out, and Dice, he said, let me tell you something about you losers out here. And he goes, he said, Carrot Top has been, had a Vegas residency for longer than anybody else at the Luxor. He's made more money than every one of you assholes. You should all shut up, and it was great. It got like a standing ovation because he really is a guy that turned it into a huge industry in that town.
Well, Carrot Top, like you said, was a big punchline. And my wife and I worked 5 days a week. So when my 2 nights a week in Vegas that I was off, I was just telling somebody today, I'd finish my show Sunday night at 10 o'clock. I'd get in my car. I'd get home at 2 a.m. My daughter would be on the couch with a boyfriend watching a movie, didn't want to have anything to do with me. My wife would be sleeping, going, you smell like garlic, get away from me. And my dog would bark. But I'm glad I came home to see these people. And then I turn around and I drive back again Wednesday. But once in a while, I would stay in Vegas. And, I go see a show or two and catch up with friends. And one night, my wife and I went to see Carrot Top. And it was like watching the Three Stooges. You're sitting there going, this is so stupid, but you're laughing. And he knows it's stupid.
It's entertaining.
But it's funny, it's creative, it's great. And like you said,
he made major money, and he did it. He's been doing it, honest to God, like 20 years at the Luxor, right?
Yes.
He knows who his audience is, and he knows how to make them happy.
And it can be little kids, it can be 90-year-old people, and everybody's laughing. He's like going to Disneyland.
It's like watching the Ed Sullivan Show.
Guy.
He's every act.
I'm not a religious man by any means, but one year I'm in Vegas and it's Passover, and Carrot Top's manager, his parents were having a Seder at their house. And I go, I'm not into any of this crap. I eat bread. I'm not a matzah guy. Since I got bar mitzvah, I'm not into any of this. You should come to my house. So I go to his parents' house, and it's like 10 Jews with yarmulkes and me and Carrot Top with his shitsaw hooker-looking girlfriend, whatever. It was great. Best Passover I ever had.
Well, do you have any Bob Saget stories? We're here today to honor and tribute Bob Saget. So does anyone here have any especially...
We're finally getting around to Saget. You emailed me.
I did.
That was the first thing we were supposed to do. And I don't want to talk about myself, but Fritz is busy asking questions. By the way, Saget loved Mark Thompson, his favorite weatherman on Fox News. He never liked you, Fritz.
No, I know that. But we had a connection because we both looked like junior college professors.
Yeah, he had that Gestapo name of Fritz. He was never.
I know. That's well. Listen, I was on the radio in Buffalo, New York, and my boss, who is I'll just call him an aware Jew. He said, I like your talent. You're very talented, but there's nobody ever that's going to be on my air that's going to call himself Fritz. Nobody's going to sound like a Nazi camp guard on my radio station. So he made me change my name to Jay Fredericks. So I changed my name to Jay Fredericks.
One of my best friends in high school was Fritz. I remember when he came in fourth grade, he wrote his name on the board. For Natalie, everybody laughed, and I like this guy.
Jay Fredericks sounds like a guy with a clothing line, though.
Yeah. I have no Saget stories, except for the fact that, when I read all those accolades about him, it was nothing I didn't know. You saw everybody, Billy Crystal and Steve Martin, everybody talking about what a great guy he was. Nobody did not like Bob Saget. No. Yeah. He was just, and I didn't see him that often because I only see comics when I go out to the comedy clubs, and I don't go out to the comedy clubs very much, even when I was doing stand-up. Because like I said, I was on the road every week. When I'm home, it's the last thing I want to do is go to a comedy club. Right. But every time I go to the Comedy Magic Club, I run into Bob. And for 6 years, we're talking about having dinner together. And it never happened.
It hasn't happened. Well, I have a tribute to Bob about, it's also kind of like themed in things that did not happen. So this is basically, this is Bob's responses to whatever the hell I had ever asked of him. So this is... Bob Saget was the kind of person who, even if he wanted nothing to do with you, he was very nice about it. Here's a montage of email responses from Bob Saget, circa 2005 to 2009. I love you. Can't do a Saturday for a long time. I'm directing a movie and writing a show for HBO. I'm happy and ADD and sorry, can't do it. Sorry, love, Bob. I'd love to, but can't do anything till July or August ever, as I'm directing a movie that takes 25/9 of my life, and I do a gig now and then at a theater, college, or club and miss my kids terribly. So sorry, just definitely can't drive anywhere till this movie's done. Face of the Penguins Take Off of March movie, narrated by Samuel Jackson, sending my love and thanks, thinking of me, love, Bob.
He did get a plug in there, didn't he, though, in your email response?
This is, the listening audience is me. Podcasts? Wow. Where they play and how. Truth be known, I won't be free till January, but thanks for the invite. Sending you props and podcasts. Kudos, Bob. Thanks. Then I'm all about the podcasting. Soon as I have a C, I'm all out about it. Yay. Damn, I miss everything these days. Off to New York to do press for my film. Thanks for invite, though, and belated Happy New Year, Bob. Love you, too. Not available for anything till September at best. Sorry. Good problems, Bob. Problems meaning work, no time for life, and the stuff that lasts. Hi, Louise. Sounds like a nice thing for sure. Just can't do it this week. I'm silly busy, which is great. Just not ideal for doing nice things like, well, a lot of things. So sending you my best. Thanks for thinking of me, Bob. So cool. Good to hear. Can't make it. Lots of mazel tov, Bob.
I wish I would have. I got to file some of those away for the next time you want me to do your podcast.
I should just make these available in a spreadsheet for anybody.
Get out of this today. I was sitting in my backyard. I was working on one of my guitars, which is, if you come over, you'll see what I'm making.
What are you making? Custom guitars? Talk about that.
Well, my girlfriend's, you'll come over, you'll see it. My girlfriend's going to sell them in her store. She's got my girlfriend, Dominique Cohen. I can plug her. Beautiful jewelry store in Palm Springs, Palm Desert at Beverly Hills. She's a beautiful jeweler. And I can plug Skechers, who I do commercials for now. And only wear Skechers because they're the best shoes.
Nice plug.
I want all your imaginary listeners to buy Skechers go to Dominique Cohen.
We're going to close up the show, Bobby, and then we're going to walk across the street and take some pictures with you in the middle of the road. So let me get
You're not going to come in the house?
No, that's the whole point.
I'll come in the house.
What do you not
I'm
get
super
about
immune.
COVID?
Come in the house.
I'm not coming in the house. Fritz can go.
I've had my shot. So you don't go anywhere? You're afraid to go anywhere?
Bobby, I have a 92-year-old mother, and I have to eat dinner with her in the backyard with like a tiny propane heater. This is us trying to just make it through this Omicron.
I've already have it. I'm not going to catch anything.
He's just had the Omicron. He may still be contagious. If you want to invite him into your house, be my guest. But I need you to come outside and pose for a picture with us. And that way the air will continue to mingle. All right.
What if I open the garage and you go look at the drums?
Yeah, do that.
I'll hold my breath.
We'll be over
and
there
run,
in 10 minutes.
I'm going to hold my breath and run through your house, Bobby. All right. So Fritz is going to tell everybody how they can review our show.
If you enjoyed this episode of Media Path, it would help us to be more discoverable by potential new listeners if you leave us a quick review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're new here and this is your first time with us, check out our back catalog. There's all kinds of binge-worthy stuff on there. Thank you for spending an hour with us, and we would be overjoyed if you took a moment to share your thoughts with us or recommend us to a friend.
We would love for you to join us online on Instagram and Twitter, where we are at Media Path Pod, and on Facebook, where we are Media Path Podcast. What's the name of our Facebook group, Dina?
Can I go now?
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah, open the garage door. We'll be right over.
Yeah.
So we have a new Facebook group called Media Path Facebook Community with Fritz and Weezy. You can find full episodes with all kinds of bonus visual content on our YouTube channel, Media Path Podcast. We would love to know what media you've been enjoying. You can contact us at our social media or email us at mediapathpodcast@gmail.com. We want to thank our guest, Bobby Slayton. Our team includes Dina Friedman, Francesco Damanda, John Maddox, Sharon Bellio, Bill Filipiak, Thomas Hubble, Mason Brown, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palanker here with Fritz Coleman, and we will see you along the media path.
That's what cool. But everything about Palm Springs, because all the celebrities lived here. So she's going to sell these for like $8,000, and I go, I don't know if anybody's going to buy these. But if you want to sell these for $7,000, $8,000, you know, it takes me like a month to make it.
Will you take the blues one and then send me the picture?
Yeah. Where do you want me to do it?
Jesus, man, those are beautiful.
But you know, they're very fragile. It's a lot of.
It's going to have to hang on.
Oh, can I see the back?
Yeah, well, that's what's going to happen. They're real, but they're a tremendous amount of work. And I'm like a mental patient when I start doing one of these.